My name is Amelia Hayes. I'm 32, and I work as a senior archivist for the Seattle Historical Society, a job that suits my quiet nature and my love for the tangible ghosts of the past. Right now, however, I'm standing in a ghost of my own making, my grandmother's living room on Port Blossom Island, a place that was once my sanctuary, now stripped of its soul. My younger sister, Clara, is waving our family's heirloom diamond ring in my face, her voice a sharp contrast to the gentle lapping of the Puget Sound against the shore outside. "You're just so sentimental, Amelia," she says, the word a thinly veiled insult. Her fingers are entwined with Liam's, my ex-husband, a man I once promised my life to. The Art Deco ring, a perfect octagon of light that has passed through 3 generations of Reed women, looks alien on her hand. Liam and I are getting married. He helped me secure everything: the house, the portfolio, the jewelry. You let it all slip through your fingers. I manage a small, calm smile, the crinkle of paper in my coat pocket a secret reassurance. It's the weight of my grandmother Evelyn's final letter, a map only I can read. They took the furniture, the stocks, the priceless view of the water, but they missed the one thing that truly matters. Where are you watching from today? I ask that of you, the unseen listener, because this story belongs to a specific time and place, yet its heart is universal. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or betrayed, drop a comment below and hit that subscribe button. Because what happened next wasn't just my story, it became a lesson that reshaped all our lives. Growing up in Seattle's Queen Anne neighborhood with Clara was an exercise in learning to live in the shade. She was 2 years my junior, but she possessed a preternatural ability to find the light and bend it toward herself. "Why can't you be more outgoing, like your sister?" became the quiet refrain of my childhood. Clara, with her cascade of blonde hair, her effortless charm, her straight-A report cards that were always presented with a flourish. I wasn't a disappointment, not exactly. My grades were solid, my interests in history and literature deep, but my quiet diligence paled next to Clara's dazzling performance of success. Our parents, Thomas and Sarah Hayes, never intended to foster a rivalry. Dad, a partner at a prestigious downtown law firm, and Mom, a curator at the Seattle Art Museum, simply appreciated accomplishment. They saw Clara's accolades as tangible proof of good parenting, while my more introspective achievements, winning a statewide essay contest, volunteering to restore rare books at the university library, were harder to display at dinner parties. They didn't see the way Clara would accidentally spill soda on my research papers the night before they were due, or how she'd subtly sow seeds of doubt among my friends whenever I developed a connection that felt truly my own. Only our grandmother, Evelyn Reed, saw the full picture. "That girl is all shine and no substance," she'd murmur, watching Clara charm a roomful of my parents' friends. "Don't you ever let her convince you that shine is the same as light." Summers on Port Blossom Island were my reprieve. Evelyn's house, a sprawling craftsman home built from cedar and river stone, sat nestled in a grove of madronas, its wide porch looking out over the sound toward the distant Seattle skyline. Evelyn Reed had built her own financial advisory firm in the 1970s, a time when a woman's place was assumed to be anywhere but the boardroom. She had a spine of steel and no patience for pretense. "Amelia has depth," she once told my mother during a strained family dinner after Mom lamented my lack of social ambition. "That's a rarer commodity than you think, Sarah." Those summers became my true education. While Clara complained about the spotty Wi-Fi and the lack of a proper mall, I absorbed Evelyn's lessons. She taught me how to read a balance sheet, the importance of an ironclad contract, and the non-negotiable value of having your own financial identity, separate from any partner or family. "This ring," she told me on my 18th birthday, opening a velvet box to reveal the stunning octagonal diamond in its intricate platinum setting, belonged to my mother, who started a hat shop with her own savings after being widowed. "It will be yours someday, Amelia. Not because you're the eldest, but because you understand what it represents. the strength and self-reliance of the women in our family. I remember Clara's sharp intake of breath from the doorway where she'd been eavesdropping. That evening, my birthday check from our aunt and uncle mysteriously vanished from my wallet. I met Liam Connell during my final year at the University of Washington. He was in law school, handsome and articulate, with an earnest, easy smile that felt like coming home. After a lifetime of competing with Clara's calculated perfection, Liam's apparent authenticity was a balm to my soul. He seemed to see me, the real me, not the person I was in comparison to my sister. We dated for 2 years before he proposed on a windswept bluff at Discovery Park. The ring he offered was a simple, elegant solitaire. "I know it's not as magnificent as your grandmother's ring," he said, his voice sincere, "but one day, I promise I'll build a life with you that's just as beautiful." I assured him it was perfect, but even then, a small, disquieting part of me noticed the flicker in his eyes, a flash of ambition, of comparison, that I quickly chose to ignore. Our wedding was an intimate affair at a winery in Woodinville. Clara was my maid of honor, a role she accepted with a pained smile. "Are you sure about him?" she'd asked the night before, her tone dripping with false concern. "He seems a bit ordinary for our family." I brushed it off as classic Clara, jealous that I was the first to marry, to have this moment that was entirely mine. What I didn't realize was that she wasn't jealous of the moment. She was assessing the assets. At the reception, a friend from work mentioned seeing Clara and Liam in a long, intense conversation by the vineyards. "They looked like they were negotiating a treaty," my friend had joked. I'd laughed, explaining that Liam was about to join my father's law firm, Sutton and Hayes, and they were likely talking shop. The first few years of our marriage were a portrait of contentment. We bought a lovely Tudor-style home in the Laurelhurst neighborhood, and at Liam's insistence, we merged our finances. "We're a team, Ames," he'd said. "No secrets, no separate accounts. Total transparency." It was a direct contradiction of Evelyn's most fervent advice: always keep an account that is yours and yours alone, Amelia. "Call it your flight fund, your freedom fund, whatever you like. Just have it." But I was in love, and his argument for complete partnership felt romantic. The cracks started as hairline fractures. Late nights at the office that became more frequent, hushed phone calls he'd take on the patio, new passwords on our shared online banking portal. When I noticed significant sums of money moving from our joint savings into an account I didn't recognize, he blamed a volatile stock market investment he was managing for a client. When I found texts from a contact saved as C filled with heart emojis, he claimed it was a needy, overly familiar colleague. I was an archivist. My job was to find the truth in faded ink and brittle paper, but in my own life, I desperately wanted to believe the fiction. The week I found undeniable proof of his affair, a receipt for a weekend at a boutique hotel in the San Juan Islands, a place we'd always talked about visiting together, was the same week Evelyn received her diagnosis. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. Aggressive. Unforgiving. "Maybe 6 months," the oncologist said, his voice gentle but firm. My world fractured along 2 fault lines at once. I filed for divorce the next day, a quiet, administrative act that felt surreal. Then I packed a bag, left a note for Liam on the kitchen counter, and drove to the Port Blossom ferry. I couldn't burden Evelyn with the messy details of my collapsing marriage while she was facing her own mortality. I moved into her guest bedroom, the one with the window seat overlooking the Sound, and devoted myself to her care. I took a leave of absence from my job, from my friends, from the shambles of my life in Seattle. Clara's visits were sporadic and performative. She'd arrive with expensive bouquets and gluten-free pastries, shed a few perfect tears for our parents to witness, and then spend most of her time on the porch taking important work calls. Evelyn would watch her with tired, knowing eyes but said little. "I'm updating my will, Amelia," she told me one evening as I was organizing her medications. "This house, my portfolio, it will all be yours. You're going to need a safe harbor after this storm with Liam passes." How did you know? I whispered, stunned. I've outlived 2 husbands and built a business from scratch. I know the look of a woman who's holding herself together with sheer force of will, she said, her voice weak but clear. The ring is still yours, of course. I've made sure of that. And I've left a generous trust for Clara, more than she deserves, frankly, but she's still my granddaughter. When Evelyn passed away in her sleep 3 months later, the grief was a physical weight, pressing the air from my lungs. At the memorial service, held in her beloved garden, Clara arrived on Liam's arm. Her face was a mask of sorrow so perfect it could have been sculpted. I was too numb to fully process the betrayal. It was only at the reading of the will the following week that the scope of their collusion became sickeningly clear. Liam, as a rising star at my father's firm, had somehow maneuvered himself into overseeing aspects of Evelyn's estate, citing a clear conflict of interest as a benefit that would ensure a smooth family transition. And Clara, with her dramatic grief and her sudden, public concern for my fragile emotional state post-divorce, had painted herself as the stable, responsible one. I should have anticipated it, but grief is a fog, and I never imagined their ambition had such a cruel depth. The first sign that something was profoundly wrong came at the will reading in the polished conference room of my grandmother's longtime attorney, Arthur Finch. Arthur, a kind man in his 70s who had known me since I was a child, seemed unusually tense. "Before we proceed," he said, polishing his spectacles with a linen handkerchief, "I must note that this is a revised will, executed just 3 weeks prior to Evelyn's passing. It contains significant alterations from all previous versions." A cold dread spread through my chest. 3 weeks before she died, Evelyn was on a morphine drip. Her lucid moments were fleeting, precious gifts. Arthur cleared his throat and began to read. To my utter shock, the new will bequeath the Port Blossom house, the entirety of her investment portfolio, and all personal effects, including the family jewelry, to Clara. I was to receive a cash sum of $50,000. "There's a mistake," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Evelyn told me. The house, the ring, they were for me. Liam, seated beside Clara with a proprietary hand on her knee, spoke in his most reasonable lawyer's tone. "Amelia has been under immense strain. Grief can affect memory." My father frowned, looking from me to Arthur. "Arthur, this doesn't sound like Evelyn at all." Arthur nodded, his expression pained. "I voiced similar concerns, Tom. However, Evelyn insisted she was of sound mind, and the document was witnessed and notarized correctly." "Witnessed by whom?" I demanded. Arthur consulted the page. "By Liam Connell and Sarah Hayes. My own mother. My ex-husband." I looked at my mother, who stared intently at her hands, unable to meet my gaze. Clara spoke, her voice smooth as silk. "Grandma had some last-minute changes of heart. Liam was kind enough to help her formalize everything. It was all very peaceful." Over the next few weeks, their carefully constructed narrative became the official family story. Liam had used his legal standing to give their actions a veneer of legitimacy. Clara had preyed on our mother's tendency to avoid conflict, convincing her that witnessing the new will was simply helping Evelyn find peace. Together, they had exploited my grandmother in her most vulnerable state to orchestrate a theft that was legally airtight. I met with 3 different estate lawyers. All gave me the same grim prognosis. Contesting a will on the grounds of undue influence or lack of capacity is notoriously difficult, expensive, and often fails without irrefutable medical evidence from the exact time of signing. "It becomes a battle of testimony," one lawyer explained sympathetically, "and they have a signed and witnessed document on their side." Clara, meanwhile, moved swiftly. She put her condo on the market and moved into the Port Blossom house. Appraisal services were seen coming and going. Friends reported seeing an estate sale company clearing out much of the furniture. Each piece of news was another turn of the knife. The betrayal radiated outward, poisoning my relationships. Family friends grew distant, uncomfortable with the schism. Relatives chose sides, many swayed by Clara and Liam's story of my supposed instability. They're saying you were trying to pressure Evelyn to write them out of the will. My father told me over a strained coffee, and that she changed it at the last minute to protect the estate from you. That's what they did. I cried, my voice cracking. How can you even listen to that? Dad sighed, looking older than his years. Clara has always been persuasive, Amelia. And Liam has the law on his side. It's their word, backed by a legal document, against your memory. Even my mother, clearly tormented by her role, couldn't bring herself to challenge Clara. Maybe this is what Evelyn wanted in the end, she offered weakly when I confronted her. Sometimes people have a change of heart at the last moment. It was easier for her to believe that than to face the truth of what our family had become. I felt adrift. The small apartment I'd rented in Ballard felt like a sterile box after the warmth and history of Evelyn's home. My savings, already depleted by the divorce, and my leave of absence, couldn't fund a protracted legal war. The final, cruelest cut came in the form of a thick, cream-colored envelope, an invitation to Clara and Liam's engagement party, to be held at my grandmother's, now Clara's, house on Port Blossom Island. You should really try to come, Clara said when she called, her voice bright and brittle. It would send a message to the whole family that you're handling this maturely and there are no hard feelings. By celebrating your engagement to my ex-husband in the house you stole, while you wear the ring that was meant for me. Is that your definition of maturity, Clara? Her laughter was like ice down the phone line. Liam was always too ambitious for you, Amelia. He needed someone on his level. And clearly, Grandma agreed with me in the end. I hung up, my hand shaking. That night, I toggled between sobbing in helpless fury and scouring legal forums for any precedent, any loophole, any hope. But every avenue seemed blocked by Liam's legal savvy and Clara's masterful manipulation. The true pain wasn't the loss of the house or the money, it was the desecration of Evelyn's legacy. She had built her life on a foundation of integrity, a principle Clara and Liam had not only disregarded, but actively mocked. And yet, a small, persistent question burned beneath the grief. Evelyn was a chess player, always thinking 3 moves ahead. She was meticulous, organized, and deeply suspicious of shortcuts and easy answers. Would she really have dismantled her life's legacy in a morphine-induced fog without leaving some kind of failsafe? It was that question, that flicker of faith in the woman who had raised me, that led me to pick up the phone and make one more appointment with Arthur Finch, not as a client trying to launch a hopeless lawsuit, but as the granddaughter of his dearest friend, searching for a truth she refused to believe was lost. The moment that changed everything arrived on a quintessential Seattle Tuesday, the sky a uniform gray canvas weeping a steady, fine mist. I hadn't intended to go to Port Blossom. The thought of seeing it transformed by Clara's aesthetic was a pain I preferred to avoid. But my cousin, Maya, who lived on the island, called me, her voice urgent. Ames, you need to get over here. There's a massive junk removal truck in your grandmother's driveway. They're clearing out the attic. The attic. Evelyn's archive. The repository of her entire life, decades of business records, meticulous journals, boxes of family photographs, and personal correspondence. My heart hammered against my ribs. I grabbed my keys and raincoat, the impending loss of that history eclipsing my own pain. I made the next ferry by seconds and drove straight to the house. The driveway was a chaotic scene. The huge disposal truck, Clara's sleek new Tesla, no doubt an early inheritance present to herself, and Liam's familiar Audi. The front door was propped open, and 2 men in work shirts were carrying heavy cardboard boxes down the main staircase. No one paid me any mind as I walked in, the scent of lavender and old paper I associated with Evelyn now mingling with the smell of damp dust and decay. I found them in the attic. Clara, in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater, was directing the workers with the imperious air of a field marshal. And on her finger, catching the dim light from the single dormer window, was the ring. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her face tightening when she saw me. What are you doing with Grandma's life? I shot back, gesturing to a stack of boxes marked E. Reed, personal papers that were slated for the truck. Decluttering, she said with a dismissive wave. This place is a museum of junk. We need to clear it out before we can even think about renovating for the wedding. Those are her journals. Her business records. Her history. Clara shrugged. Not anymore. They're my history now, and I'm editing. Besides, shouldn't you be at your dusty old job? Oh, wait, you took a leave. Are you ever going back? Liam appeared at the top of the attic stairs, his expression of surprise quickly morphing into one of practiced, condescending sympathy. Amelia, we weren't expecting you. I'm here to stop you from throwing our grandmother's memories in a landfill, I said, moving toward the boxes. Liam stepped into my path, a physical barrier. Everything in this house now legally belongs to Clara. I have to ask you to leave. I'm not leaving without her journals, I insisted. You can have the house, the money, all of it. But her words belong to the family, not the dump. Clara let out a sharp, cold laugh that echoed in the dusty space. God, you're just so sentimental, Amelia, she sneered, still grasping at straws. Just accept it. You lost. She held up her left hand, turning it so the Art Deco diamond flashed. Liam and I are getting married. He helped me secure everything, the house, the portfolio, the jewelry. You let it all slip through your fingers. In that moment, watching them stand there, my sister and my ex-husband, a matched set of smug ambition, something inside me didn't break. It solidified. A profound, icy calm washed over me, extinguishing the frantic heat of my grief and anger. I smiled. A real smile. It was so unexpected that it wiped the smirks from both their faces. What's so funny? Clara asked, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. You think you've won, I said, my voice quiet but carrying clearly in the stillness. You've taken everything you can see, everything you can touch and sell. I paused, letting the weight of the words settle. But you've missed the one thing that actually matters. Liam frowned, his legal mind sensing a variable he hadn't accounted for. What are you talking about? My hand went to my pocket, and I felt the crisp edges of the envelope I'd carried with me every day for a month. It was Evelyn's final letter, given to my friend Chloe with strict instructions to deliver it to me a week after the funeral. You'll find out, I said, turning to leave. Enjoy the house. While it's yours. Is that a threat? Liam called out, the lawyer in him unable to resist assessing risk. I paused on the top step and looked back at them. They were a tableau of greed, framed by the dusty detritus of a life they had disrespected, their faces a mixture of triumph and a new, creeping unease. It's not a threat, Liam, I said, my voice even and calm. It's a promise. Grandma Evelyn taught me a lot more than you will ever understand. As I walked out of that house and into the cleansing Seattle mist, I felt a surge of something I hadn't allowed myself in months. Power. Not the loud, aggressive power Clara wielded, but a quiet, deep-rooted strength. In my car, I pulled the letter from my pocket and read the familiar, spidery script one more time. My dearest Amelia, if you are reading this, it means the worst has happened and the wolves are at the door. Do not despair. Remember what I always taught you, the most valuable assets are never on the balance sheet. Trust yourself. Follow the map I left for you. I have planned for this. I have planned for everything. It was time to follow the map. Arthur Finch's office was a sanctuary of quiet order. The scent of old books and his lingering pipe tobacco, a habit he'd kicked a decade ago but that had permanently infused the leather chairs, was a comfort. His longtime paralegal, Margaret, greeted me with a knowing smile. He's been waiting for you, dear, she said, her voice a low, kind murmur. He has something for you. Arthur stood as I entered, his tall frame looking more fragile than I remembered, but his eyes were sharp. Amelia, thank you for coming back. I was hoping you would. I wasn't sure I should, I admitted, taking the seat he offered. After the will reading, "Your grandmother was my friend for 45 years, he said, cutting me off gently. "And I've been a lawyer for 50. I know a shenanigan when I see one." For the next hour, Arthur laid out what he had been doing since that awful day. While he was legally bound to execute the will as written, its sudden appearance had raised every red flag in his long career. Evelyn was the most meticulous planner I have ever known. That hastily drafted document was completely out of character. He had begun his own quiet, off-the-books investigation. He reviewed his notes, phone logs, and every piece of correspondence with Evelyn from the past year. 2 months before she passed, he said, leaning forward, she told me she was creating what she called her firewall. A contingency plan in case her primary estate plan was ever compromised. My hand instinctively went to my pocket, to the letter. "A map," I breathed. Arthur's eyes lit up with understanding. "She got the letter to you." "Excellent." I wasn't sure it would make it through the fog of everything. "I have it. But I don't understand." "What map? What firewall?" Arthur unlocked a drawer in his large oak desk and pulled out a single, slender file folder. Evelyn was weak, but her mind was still a steel trap. She knew something was amiss in those final weeks, but she didn't have the strength to fight them directly. So she left a trail. He slid the file across the desk. "This is what I've been able to piece together. It's the beginning." Inside was a document that took my breath away, the articles of an irrevocable trust. The Evelyn Reed Legacy Trust. She established this 2 months before she died, Arthur explained, when her medical records show she was perfectly lucid and had full command of her faculties. She transferred the majority of her liquid assets, her entire investment portfolio, her business holdings, and a significant cash reserve into this trust. Hope, fierce and bright, surged through me. "Is that legal?" "Perfectly. A will governs the probate estate. An irrevocable trust is a separate legal entity. It operates outside the will. The assets within it are not part of the estate that Clara and Liam were fighting over." "So what does it mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It means," Arthur said, a genuine, triumphant smile spreading across his face, "that while Clara may have the house and its contents, she does not have the fortune. Not even close. The vast majority of your grandmother's wealth is in this trust, and you, Amelia, are the sole beneficiary." The relief was so immense it felt like I could finally breathe again after months of being underwater. "Why didn't you tell me at the will reading?" "The trust has a 90-day waiting clause after her death before its existence can be disclosed to the beneficiary. A cooling-off period, she called it. It also has a strict confidentiality clause." I couldn't speak of it until that period ended, which was last Tuesday, the day of the confrontation in the attic. Evelyn's timing had been impeccable, even from the beyond. "Does Liam know about this?" "Absolutely not. Evelyn structured it to be discreet. It wouldn't show up in a standard probate search. They would have no reason to look for it because they believe they already have everything." With this new reality, our strategy shifted. The trust secured my financial future and honored the true spirit of Evelyn's wishes, but it didn't reclaim the house, the ring, or her personal history. For that, we had to prove the will was fraudulent. "We need concrete evidence of undue influence," Arthur reiterated. "Something more than testimony." "Her medical records show she was heavily medicated," I said. "But they also note periods of lucidity." Liam was clever. He would have waited for one of those moments to be noted in the chart. I thought of the attic, the boxes, the rush to destroy them. Her journals, her papers. What if she wrote something down during those last weeks? "That would be a smoking gun," Arthur said, his brow furrowed. "If we can get our hands on them." I told him about the disposal truck. His expression turned to thunder. "He's destroying evidence. I'll file for an emergency injunction this afternoon to freeze all assets and halt any disposal of personal property pending a formal investigation into the validity of the will." While Arthur set the legal wheels in motion, I started my own investigation. I tracked down Sophia, the gentle home health nurse who had cared for Evelyn in her final month. Over tea in her small apartment, she confirmed my darkest suspicions. Your grandmother was barely awake that day, Sophia recounted, her voice troubled. That man, the lawyer, he came with your sister. I told him it wasn't a good time, that she was very tired. He said it was a simple legal formality that couldn't wait. Would you be willing to sign a statement to that effect? I asked. She hesitated, twisting her napkin. I could lose my certification. My agency has very strict rules. This is about doing the right thing for a woman who was taken advantage of at her most vulnerable, I said softly. It's about honoring her. What would you want someone to do if it was your grandmother? After a long, thoughtful silence, she nodded. I will help. I kept my own private logs of her condition every day. Sometimes they differed from the official chart. I felt the official record wasn't always complete. With Sophia's logs and Arthur's injunction, our case was growing stronger, but we needed one more piece, something to shatter their narrative completely. It came from my father. He called me late one night, his voice strained. Amelia, I was clearing out some old files in my desk at the firm. I found something. It's a letter from your grandmother, addressed to me. It was in a stack of interoffice memos that Liam was supposed to have delivered to my desk a month before she passed. He never gave it to me. He read it to me over the phone. Tom, I am writing this because I am worried. Clara's sudden interest in my finances, coupled with Liam's involvement, feels wrong. I am too tired to fight them, but I need you to know my true wishes. I have made arrangements with Arthur to ensure Amelia is protected. If anything happens, please make sure you honor that. I fear they will try to interfere. Why would Liam hide this from me? Dad asked, the sound of his dawning comprehension painful to hear. Because it proves premeditation, I said, the legal term coming to me unexpectedly. It proves Grandma was worried about exactly what they ended up doing. There was a long silence on the line. I trusted him, Dad said finally, his voice thick with anger and regret. I brought him into this family. I mentored him. His voice hardened. What do you need me to do? Over the next 2 weeks, we moved in silence, our advantage being that Clara and Liam had no idea what was coming. The injunction froze their renovation plans and, more importantly, secured the boxes from the attic, which were placed in a court-supervised storage facility. My father launched a quiet internal review at his firm, uncovering a pattern of Liam intercepting mail and misrepresenting client communications. Clara and Liam's texts became increasingly frantic and accusatory. What is this legal nonsense? You're just trying to harass us, Clara wrote. This is a pathetic new low, even for you. I never responded. Let them spin in their own anxiety. Evelyn had taught me patience. She taught me to build a case brick by brick, not to charge and swinging. Finally, 3 weeks after my visit to the attic, Arthur called. We have them, he said, his voice calm but infused with the satisfaction of a battle well planned. The judge has scheduled a mandatory settlement conference. All parties must attend. That evening, I sat in my small apartment, the letter from Evelyn on the table beside me. The legal fight would be messy. My family might never fully recover. But for the first time in a long time, I felt grounded. I was standing on my own, using the lessons Evelyn had taught me to defend the very legacy she had left. A text from Liam buzzed on my phone. Whatever you're trying, Amelia, it won't work. The law is on our side. I smiled, thinking of the irrevocable trust, the nurse's logs, the hidden letter. He was right. The law was on one side. He just didn't realize yet that it wasn't his. The settlement conference was scheduled in a neutral conference room at a mediation center downtown. The air was thick with tension. I arrived with Arthur and my father. My mother was there too, her presence a quiet statement of her shifted allegiance, her face pale and resolved. Clara and Liam were already seated, a united front of polished indignation. Clara wore a sharp, cream-colored pantsuit. the diamond on her hand flashing as she gestured impatiently at her watch. Liam had his leather briefcase open, his expression one of professional annoyance. "Let's hope we can resolve this quickly," Liam began, addressing Arthur as if I weren't in the room. "This frivolous injunction is costing my fiancé a great deal of emotional distress." Arthur simply opened a thick binder on the mahogany table. "We are here," he said, his calm voice cutting through the pretense, "to discuss the fraudulent execution of the will of Evelyn Reed." "That will is legally sound and has been through probate," Liam retorted, his voice sharp. "Has it?" Arthur methodically laid out our case. He began with Sophia's detailed nursing logs, documenting Evelyn's cognitive state. He followed with my father's testimony about the letter Liam had deliberately withheld, a clear breach of fiduciary duty. He presented bank records showing transfers Liam had initiated from Evelyn's accounts in her final days, all directed to accounts he controlled. With each document, the color drained slightly from Liam's face, while Clara's tapping fingers beat a faster rhythm on the table. "This is all circumstantial," Liam argued, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "You can't prove she didn't want to make those changes." Arthur said, pausing for effect. "But that's where you're wrong." He slid a small USB drive across the table. "Your mistake was assuming that a woman who built a financial firm by scrutinizing every detail wouldn't have a state-of-the-art security system in her home office. One that recorded video and audio to a secure cloud server." Liam froze. I watched the calculation in his eyes as he rapidly assessed this new, devastating variable. "The footage is inadmissible," he stammered. "Chain of custody, privacy. The security company has provided a notarized affidavit of authenticity," Arthur said smoothly, plugging the drive into a laptop connected to a large screen on the wall. "Let's watch, shall we?" The video was clear, the audio painfully sharp. It showed Evelyn's study, the date and time stamp in the corner confirming it was from the day the will was signed. It showed Liam and Clara leading a frail, disoriented Evelyn to her desk. "It's just a few small updates, Evelyn," Liam's voice on the video said, oozing false reassurance as he placed a pen in her trembling hand. "Just to make sure everything is in order." "Amelia?" Evelyn's voice was a frail whisper. "My ring? The house for Amelia?" "Of course, Grandma." Clara's voice cooed from just off screen, her tone sickeningly sweet. "Everything is taken care of, just the way you want." The video showed Liam physically guiding Evelyn's hand across the signature lines. When it was over, he gathered the papers with a triumphant glance at Clara. Arthur stopped the playback. The silence in the room was a physical thing. "That," my father said, his voice shaking with a quiet rage, "is elder abuse. It's fraud. And it's a felony." Clara finally found her voice. "That video is fake. It's been edited. This is a trap." "The original files are with the forensic unit of the security company," Arthur replied calmly. "They are prepared to testify in court." Liam's professional mask finally shattered, revealing the desperate man beneath. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. "What do you want, Amelia? A settlement? We can work something out. A more equitable split." "I want justice for my grandmother," I said, my voice steady. It was the first time I had spoken. "I want you to undo every single thing you did." "There's more," Arthur added, sliding the file for the Evelyn Reed Legacy Trust across the table. "This is the real will, so to speak. The trust your grandmother established 2 months before her death, protecting the vast majority of her assets. Assets that now belong solely to Amelia." Clara stared at the document, her face a mask of disbelief. "What trust? There was no trust. Evelyn was always 3 moves ahead," Arthur said. "She built a firewall you didn't even know existed." Liam scanned the document, the legal implications sinking in. Their victory had been a mirage. They had fought and cheated for an empty house. "If this goes to court, it will be a media circus," he threatened weakly. "It will destroy the family name, your father's firm." Dad leaned forward, his eyes boring into the man he once called his successor. You are fired from Sutton and Hayes, effective immediately. Our ethics committee will be filing a full report with the State Bar Association. You destroyed your own name, Liam. Clara turned to me, her eyes welling with tears. Whether they were tears of remorse or of defeat, I couldn't tell. Amelia, please. We're sisters. We can fix this. Can we, Clara? I asked softly. Can we fix you and my ex-husband coercing our dying grandmother? I stood up and walked around the table to where she sat. I held out my hand. After a long moment, her shoulders slumped in defeat. She slowly, deliberately, pulled the Art Deco ring from her finger and placed it in my palm. It felt warm from her skin. This was never just about a ring or a house, I said, closing my fingers around it. It was about integrity. It was about her legacy. A concept you two sacrificed for what? A weekend house and a few months of playing rich. Arthur laid out the terms. A full, legally binding confession to the fraudulent execution of the will. The immediate transfer of the house deed back to the estate. Full restitution for any items sold or damaged. A signed agreement to never make any future claim against me, the estate, or the trust. In exchange, Arthur concluded, Amelia will not press criminal charges. You've ruined my life, Clara whispered. No, I said, looking from her to Liam. You built your life on a foundation of lies. It was bound to collapse. You just did it to yourselves. As they left the room, stripped of their arrogance and their spoils, my mother came over and wrapped her arms around me. I am so sorry, Amelia. I should have been stronger. I should have listened to my heart, not to them. We all learn, I said, hugging her back. That's what Evelyn wanted. I looked down at the ring in my hand, its perfect, clean lines a symbol of the order I had fought to restore. Evelyn had given me a map, and I had followed it. Not to a treasure, but back to myself. In the 2 years that followed, the house on Port Blossom Island slowly came back to life. The restoration was a painstaking process, a kind of archaeology of its own. I hired craftspeople who loved the old wood and respected the original architecture. As they worked, I sorted through the boxes from the attic, a task that became a form of communion with my grandmother. Her journals, written in a confident, looping script, told the story of a woman who faced down sexism, financial crises, and personal loss with unwavering resolve. I found her business plan for the firm she started in her late 40s, scribbled on a diner napkin. I found letters from my grandfather, love poems from a man I'd only known through photographs. I wasn't just reclaiming a house, I was reclaiming a history, my history. The Evelyn Reed Legacy Trust became the foundation for my new life's work. I used its resources to establish the Second Act Fund, a nonprofit venture that provides grants and mentorship to women over 50 looking to start their own businesses. The launch event was held in Evelyn's garden, now replanted with her favorite blue hydrangeas and fragrant climbing roses. Arthur, now fully retired but serving on my board, raised a glass. To Evelyn, he said, his voice thick with emotion, who proved that a woman's most powerful act is her second one. My relationship with my parents found a new, more honest footing. My father, having retired from the firm, seemed lighter, more present. He'd come out to the island to help me in the garden, and we'd talk for hours, not as father and daughter, but as two adults navigating the complexities of family and forgiveness. My mother, in her own quiet way, had found her voice. She began taking pottery classes, her hands, once wrung in anxiety, now shaping clay with a newfound confidence. She set a firm boundary with Clara, a feat that felt monumental. Clara and Liam's engagement dissolved in the acid of their shared failure. Liam's legal career in Seattle was over. A 1-year suspension from the bar was the official punishment, but the reputational damage was permanent. I heard through the grapevine that he'd moved back to the Midwest. Clara moved to California, seeking reinvention in the Los Angeles sun. She sends my mother carefully curated postcards of her new life, but she has never sent me an apology that acknowledges the depth of her betrayal. I've come to accept that she may never be capable of it. Forgiveness, I've learned, is something I can give myself, but reconciliation requires a truth she isn't ready to tell. I didn't expect to find love again, not for a long time. But it found me, quietly, in the form of the landscape architect I'd hired to restore Evelyn's garden. His name is Ben, and he has kind eyes and hands that know how to nurture things back to life. Our conversations started with soil composition and native plants and slowly blossomed into discussions about life, loss, and the beauty of putting down roots. It's a slow-growing, sturdy love, built on shared values, not grand romantic gestures. It feels real. Tonight, on the second anniversary of Evelyn's passing, I'm sitting in her study. The room is filled with the scent of beeswax and salt air. The Art Deco ring isn't on my finger. It rests in its velvet box on the mantel, a beautiful artifact of a story that is now complete. My inheritance wasn't the house, or the money, or even this ring. It was the map she left me, the one that taught me that true wealth is integrity, true strength is resilience, and true north is knowing your own worth. She taught me that you can't control what others do, but you can always choose how you respond. You can choose to follow the map back to yourself. What inheritance, visible or invisible, has shaped your life? Has someone's wisdom guided you, or have you had to draw your own map in the dark? I would be honored to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey of reclaiming a legacy has resonated with you, please subscribe for more stories of resilience. And like or share this, because you never know who might need a reminder of the quiet strength they hold inside.